Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Sadgurum Pranatosmyaham. Hari Om. Salutations to all. So we are seeing the section where the ego is to be transcended, and the effects of this ego are what we are seeing. And yesterday we saw how this buddhi of ours can do both. It can increase the ego and its consequent effects, or we can use this buddhi to transcend the ego and realize the self. So now this 302 presents a very nice analogy. Brahmananda nidhir mahabalavata ahankara ghorahina samveshtyatmani rakshyate gunamayaihi chandaistribhirmastakaihi vijnanakhya mahasina shrutimata vichidya shirshatrayam nirmulya imim nidhim sukhakaram dhiro nubhoktum kshamaha. So the analogy here is, there is a treasure, Brahmananda Nidhi, and this treasure, which is of the nature of bliss, Brahmananda, is being as though guarded. Mahabalavata ahankara ghorahina. It is enwrapped, like a pot of gold sometimes on which there is a snake. Like that, there is this terrible snake, Samveshtya, which is around this, enwrapping this great Nidhi, Brahmananda Nidhi. Balavata, and this snake is very strong. Ahankara ghora ahina. By this strong snake, this Nidhi is actually enveloped, enwrapped. Samveshtya atmani rakshyate gunamayahi. And it is guarded atmani for its own selfish reason. This ego, as though, is guarding this. So what is the meaning of this? The snake, which is around the treasure, cannot use the treasure by itself and will not allow others also to use it. That's what it means. This ego prevents the individual from realizing the self, enjoying the bliss of the self. And others also, they suffer because one doesn't realize the self when one acts out of the 6 impurities. Gone. So he says here, the analogy says here, that it is for its own selfish use, as though it is guarding. Gunamayahi chandai stribhir mastakaihi. There are the three hoods of this snake. What are the three hoods? The three gunas. So this is not an ordinary snake with one hood. This snake has three hoods. The snake of ego is jealously guarding, having three hoods. Samveshtyatmani rakshate gunamayehi chandai stribhir mastakaihi. Now this terrible serpent, what has to be done? It has to be destroyed. Vijnana akhya mahasina, with a great sword of contemplation. Vijnana here means that. Shruti mata, with that sword has to be sharpened with the knowledge of the scriptures. Vichidya shirshatrayam, and one should just cut off these three hoods of the snake. Nirmulyaham, nirmulyahi imam nidhim sukhakaram. This nidhi which will bring lot of joy to oneself and to others. The dhira purusha must destroy the snake. Nirmulyahi. Experience bliss for oneself and others. Dhiraha anubhoktum kshamaha. That wise person who uses the sword of contemplation, sharpened by the scriptures, that person who destroys this serpent of this great serpent of this ego, that person becomes capable of enjoying this nidhi, which is blissful, which will bring bliss to oneself and to others. So now that is the basic meaning of this verse. So what are the different aspects of this analogy now? First and foremost, it is a nidhi which is in our own heart. Brahmananda is our own true nature. And this ego is the obstacle to realizing that. That is one aspect. Just like the snake. That snake doesn't allow us to enjoy the gold or the treasure. The snake doesn't allow others also to enjoy. It is a lose-lose situation for everybody. Same way it is in this life also, that Brahmananda, neither the ego is experiencing nor others are experiencing. What is the use of that nidhi if it is not utilized at all by anybody? It is just waste, it is just lying there. So in that way, in each one's heart, so how happy would the world be if there would be everybody who relates to each other with that attitude that I am Brahman, you are Brahman, we all are divine. But we don't relate like that. We relate out of ego. So though we want supreme happiness, each one fights with the other, each one hurts the other. There is so much of pain. Like when anybody goes near that snake, what will that snake do? Bite. Neither the nidhi the snake is able to use, nor somebody else who is trying to use it can use it. It just bites. Imagine everybody in the world is having that snake of the ego. Brahmananda is in the hearts of each one, but each one has one snake, that is the ego. Each one bites the other. Where will there be peace and happiness in the world? So, in that way, when we analyze this analogy, it has many deeper significance. So, one aspect is this: Balavata ahankara ghorahina samveshtya atmani rakshate. This jealousy is one thing. Gunamayais chandais tribhir mastakaihi. See, jealously guarded for its selfish use. Where is the ego using it selfishly? The ego is deriving its existence from Brahman, that Brahmananda only. But there also, it is deriving only the sentiency of Brahman, not the unlimited nature of Brahman. The ego is born when that identification of this Brahman happens with one body, mind, intellect. That ego derives its sentiency from there. The sense of limitation is still there because it identifies with the body, mind, intellect. So only that much it derives from it. Brahmananda part, the infinite existence part, it doesn't derive. This is just for understanding, not to go too technical into it, saying if the three are one, how can it take only one and leave the two? Don't go technical into it. The idea is to understand that when the ego it is borrowing its sentiency from that Brahman, and it is having its own sense of identity, and it is guarding this Brahmananda from enjoying itself or enjoying making others enjoy. So both are gone. And how is it doing it? With three gunas, the three hoods which are there, sattva, rajas, and tamas. With these three hoods, as though it is guarding. So the individuality in us, it is being guarded by the three gunas. The ego is fed by these three. Uh, in one commentary on this verse, one extra point is given, and that is that this ego is a serpent. The serpent is being fed the milk of what? Sense objects and sense pleasures. So, being fed the milk of sense objects and sense pleasure, this ego has become strong, and it has three hoods. So, with these three hoods, it drinks the uh, sense pleasures, sense objects. It is fed by that. So we indulge in rajasic, tamasic, sattvic sense pleasures, and that strengthens this great snake of the ego. So gunamayahi chandai stribhir mastakaihi. As long as the three gunas are there, the identification with these three gunas is there, the ego pops up. By three gunas, what do we mean? If you remember, we have seen that every guna has two parts. One is the necessary part, other is the unnecessary part. Tamo guna, the necessary part is, it is required for sleep. Unnecessary part is ignorance of the self, procrastination, laziness, lethargy, carelessness. That is unnecessary part. Rajoguna, the necessary part is, it is necessary for dynamism, activity, goals. The unnecessary part is attachment, insistence, greed, jealousy. Those are the unnecessary parts. Sattva guna, the necessary part is, it is required for knowledge and peace. The unnecessary part is when one becomes fanatic and inflexible based on that knowledge. One doesn't accommodate others. One becomes arrogant out of the ego of knowledge. Those are unnecessary parts. So when we say that this hood, the snake has to be killed with these three, with the sword, all the three hoods have to be destroyed. The destruction is of the unnecessary part, not of the necessary part. That cannot be destroyed, and that should not be destroyed. Because then that is not the, what is binding is not the necessary part. So one doesn't have to struggle. Otherwise one will struggle that I will not sleep, I will not do activity, or I will not gain knowledge. That is not to be done. The unnecessary part, which is strengthening this ego, which is being fed by this milk of the sense objects, sense pleasures, and how this ego becomes stronger because of this unnecessary part, the pleasure of sleep and procrastination, the pleasure of attachment, the pleasure of inflexibility and rigidity, those things have to be destroyed. So when he says that we have to destroy vichidya shirsha trayam, it means this unnecessary part must be removed. Vijnanakhya mahasina. Now this is the how to remove. First, the sword has to be sharp. If the sword is blunt, I will not be able to cut the hood. The sword will only serve as a means to lift the snake and put it somewhere else. Again, the snake comes back. Many times our knowledge is not sharp. Or it is, so how do I make it sharp? Vijnanakhya maha asina shruti mata. It becomes sharp in two ways. One is by, see, when you have to make it sharp, you have to put some water. Um, what do we call it? You have to rub it there. Sharpen it using a surface, a stone or some such thing. Put some water and rub, make it sharp properly. So the reflection has to be used, the scriptural knowledge has to be used. So scripture is a rock as though, and this reflection is this process of sharpening. When I do mananam, I reflect on the knowledge. That is the first part. The second part is the water which is put. If that water is not put there, it will just get scratched. It will not be properly sharp. It may get weak and damaged also. So that is the water of purity and devotion. That purity and devotion has to be there in our life. Then that buddhi is also sharp using the scriptural logic. What Shankaracharya said in Sadhana Panchakam. Dustarkat suviramyatam shrutimatas tarkonu sandhiyatam. Put aside false logic. Use the logic given by the scriptures. Same thing he says here. Shrutimata vijnana akhya maha asina. Now when I do manan, when I have devotion and required purity, the sword becomes sharp. That sharp sword, meaning the mind which is sharp, mind which is pure, Shuddha Buddhi and Sukshma Buddhi, Ekagra Buddhi. With that mind, I contemplate steadily on self, that I am pure consciousness, I am not this ego. This false identification, which is this ego rising because of attachment to BMI, that has to be destroyed. So for that, this sword is important. Vichidya Shirshatrayam. With that, you destroy the three hoods. The source of these three hoods. How these three hoods and the snake is being strengthened by sense pleasures, etc. So self-control one lives in, weakens this ego, and with this sharp blade, with this sharp sword, destroy this ego. Kill it. Where? In contemplation, steady contemplation that I am beyond the three states. Sattva, Rajas, Tamas belong to the mind. I am that pure consciousness which is Gunatrayatita. So that contemplation steadily, that I am not this, I am that steady contemplation based on scriptural reflection as well as purity of mind as well as self-control, then this ego will be destroyed. Nirmulya. So nirmulya means to remove the root cause. The root cause of root cause of ego is ignorance. That ignorance has to be removed. Nirmulya. Nirmulyahi imam. This ego. Imam nidhim sukhakaram. That Brahmananda, that treasure which can bring happiness to oneself and others. This Dhira Purusha is capable of enjoying. Dhira Kshamaha Anubhoktum. That Dhira Purusha is wise, who will be able to experience this bliss. And once one experiences that bliss, one shares it with everybody else. So that Nidhi, which was unnecessarily being protected by this ego, not being helpful to itself or to others, now that ego, when it is destroyed, that Nidhi will be most useful, beneficial to everyone. Now, Dhira Purusha. Who is this Dhira Purusha? Very nice meanings this word Dhira Purusha has. Dhira has the nice meanings. Who is a wise person? Dhira. First meaning of this is the simplest meaning. That in the most provocative circumstances or situations, one who does not get disturbed is a Dhira Purusha. In Vedanta, this is a very important requirement. Circumstances can be anything. If one starts reacting, one starts getting agitated, one loses the balance of mind, and one is for a long time one carries that agitation in the mind, to that extent that one is not able to pay attention to what one is doing here and now, then that person is not a Dhira Purusha. Why? Because reactions, impulsiveness, all that is so fast that and the mind remains disturbed for a long time. That mind has lot of identification, lot of insistence, lot of expectation. This has to be like this only. Inability to accept life as it is coming. Allowing things to disturb one tremendously. Not finding solutions but getting stuck with problems. Such a mind cannot understand and live Vedanta properly. It will just be one objective, informative exercise that I know Vedanta also. But if one really wants to reduce the ego and realize Brahman, which is the purpose of Vedanta, then one needs to be a Dhira Purusha. Meaning one needs to remain equanimous in the pairs of opposites. In the most provocative situation, one does not get disturbed. And in the most conducive situation, one doesn't get extremely elated. So this meaning is given by Kalidas ji. Vikara hetau prapte sati yesham chetamsi na vikriyante te eva dhiraha. In the most difficult situation, one who doesn't lose the cool, one remains balanced. See, one may have a show of anger or a show of disciplining. That is a show, that is not inside disturbance. Like a mother may discipline a child, but inside the mother doesn't have anger and frustration and feeling that what happened was not right and non-acceptance. All that is not there. To discipline the child, the mother may show a certain reaction, but it may not be really inside there. Many times for us, it is not a show. It is actually happening inside, that I am disturbed from within. And this happens to most of us. So we have to introspect, find out where am I insisting, what am I not able to accept, why am I obsessed with the problem and agitation, why can't I find a focus on the solution. So those things one has to do, cultivate certain anchors and certain stabilizers, whereby at such times I can hold on to something which to prevent me from reacting, like a mantra or the breathing or remembering what is my goal. Many options are there. So once I understand that part, that in Vedanta, I have to reduce the ego. This is what we are seeing. The ego has to be reduced, and reactions, insistence, all that feeds the ego. Then how much ever I study, it is of no use. That's why the word used is for a Dhira Purusha. Who will be able to destroy this snake? Only a Dhira Purusha. Nobody else. So one meaning of Dhira is this. Second meaning of the word Dhira is Dhiyam Rati, which it is that which helps the buddhi, that quality which helps the buddhi to control the mind and the senses. If my goal is very clear that I want to realize the absolute truth and I want to destroy this ego, then I control the senses, control the mind through the proper clarity and conviction. So four things are required. Clarity should bring conviction. Conviction must give us the courage, and courage, when I live these three, clarity, conviction, courage, consistently, then the realization can happen. Because I must have clarity that I am not the ego and I am pure consciousness. That comes through this reflection, what was said earlier. That is the sharpening process of the sword. So reflect clearly. Have this clarity, which must give me the conviction that yes, I am not the ego, I am Brahman. That knowledge which doesn't give me conviction is only informative knowledge. And that conviction has to transform my life. So I must have the courage to put aside what I have been doing so far. In simple example, if we give, if I get proper clarity that drugs are harmful, alcohol is harmful, cigarette is harmful, and I am now convinced of the harmful effects of it. I've understood medically what it does to the body. I have seen examples of people. Now, with that clarity, that conviction has to come. If the conviction has not come, that means the clarity is weak. I've just listened to it, heard it, bus, that's all. Once the conviction comes that no, this is not good at all, and I don't want to fall for peer pressure and this so-called social drinking and all that. A wrong notion. Why should I abuse my body? I have a rare human body and I have a divine goal to reach. So once I understand that I need to conserve the energy, I have a good inspiring goal. It may be divinity, it may be anything else also, but I want to do something great with my life. I don't want to just harm my life. This human body, not required. So once I have the clarity, then conviction, then I must have the courage to say no. How much ever people may push, I say no. This is my conviction. Respect it. If they don't like my company, they can find somebody else. But for them, I don't have to compromise. This is my fundamental conviction, which if you are my well-wisher, you will respect. Or on this issue, don't insist. I go my way, you go your way. On other issues, we are together. So that courage has to be there. And this I have to follow consistently, regularly. It cannot be that one day I say all this and the next day immediately I fall for it. No, consistently. This if I do, then I am controlling my senses, I am controlling the mind through the buddhi. The senses may have a craving, the mind may impulsively want it, but with the buddhi, I am controlling them. With the clarity and conviction, I am controlling them. That person is a Dhira Purush. So one is through the buddhi, control mind and intellect. Second is emotionally don't react and respond, don't react and get agitated. And at the sensory level, have sense control. Then I am a Dhira Purush. And the last meaning of Dhira is Dhyam Irayati. One who is pursuing that consciousness, which is the illuminer of the buddhi itself. And what is giving this sense of I, what we saw earlier. The sense of I arises, the small I arises because of the consciousness enlivening the buddhi. So that consciousness which enlivens the buddhi, which today I don't know about, and I think I am alive by just default, and this body is alive by itself. One who is wise enough to discriminate that no, this body is inert, body, mind, intellect are inert. There is a consciousness which enlivens that. My nature is that, so I am pursuing to realize that state. This Brahmananda Nidhi is my nature. This ego is unnecessarily guarding it. Now I have to remove that. So one who is pursuing that pure consciousness, because one realizes it is that which is the illuminer of the body, mind, intellect. And that is my true nature. That I am that on which this BMI depends. Today I am thinking I am the BMI on which this, by itself this BMI is functioning, or this consciousness is inside the BMI somewhere. Those notions one removes and one says, I am that and I need to realize that. That person is called as a wise person. Now, in this commentary, Gurudev has also given one more nice point that when we say cut off the hoods, the three hoods, how to cut off the three hoods? So, in the second last paragraph, he says here, with such an instrument, which is sharpened through contemplation. You see the footnote there is given here. Vijnanakhya Mahasina is equal to Nididhyasa Janya Anubhava Namna. That the experience of the self which arises by steady contemplation, which is Vijnana Akhya, Mahasina, the great sword, which has been sharpened through reflection, through devotion and sense control, etc. With that sword, I contemplate steadily, meaning I cut the three hoods. Now, how to cut the three hoods? He says, let us cut off the three hoods of this fearful serpent. How? So he says, tamas can be ended with rajas. When tamoguna is there in our life, that I have to eliminate laziness, lethargy, procrastination, that I have to eliminate with rajas by invoking dynamism, promptness, setting targets within timelines. I have to achieve that. So I come out of tamas by invoking rajas, rajas by sattva. This rajas has to be eliminated. So once one has goals, activities, one works hard, puts timelines, one becomes disciplined, but one is doing for I. So the more one does it for I, the more will be the stress. So what should one do? Do the same work with the attitude of selflessness. Dedicate it to a higher purpose, reduce the self-importance, work together as a team, invoke more love. Let the goal be such that I lose myself and forget myself while working, absorbed in it. Then what has happened? That rajas transforms into sattva. And then sattva, one transcends by nididhyasana. So when the word nididhyasana is used, it includes all this background. Suddenly one cannot sit and contemplate I am Brahman. Without eliminating tamas and rajas, if I sit to contemplate I am Brahman, I will reach nowhere. Hence he says here that sattva finally ends by itself. The ego has to be thus annihilated, plucked by its very root. What is the root? We saw the root is ignorance. Make it rootless, destroyed, so that it will not again rise. Destroyed from the root, eliminated. Cause removed, effect is no more there. So this is a beautiful analogy here. Also giving us the process of sadhana. Continuing this further. Now is a caution. There is no meter for the next verse. Yavadva yatkinchid vishadosha spurtirasti che dehe katham arogyaya bhavet tadvat katham arogyaya bhavet tadvad hantapi yogino mukyai. Ahantapi yogino mukyai. Tadvad ahantapi yogino mukyai. So what does it say? Yavad, as long as yat kinchit visha dosha spurti rasti chet dehe, dehe, in the body, even a little bit of uh, poison is there, is left in the body. How can there be complete recovery for a person? Katham arogyaya bhavet tadvat ahantapi yogino muktye. Ahantapi means ego. Ahamta api yogino muktye. For the yogi who has to experience complete liberation, if even little traces of ego are left, how can that yogi experience mukti? Just like if little traces of poison are left in the body, how can that person have complete health and recovery? So now that is the example again here. So what is the meaning here? That complete annihilation of ego is required. What happens to us is when we see in the world, when we live in the world, then there is always this feeling that when we are living in the world, some ego is required. Because if this little ego is not there, then we will be taken for granted. Now, one aspect here is that if I want realization of the self, I must understand very clearly that till the ego, even little trace of ego is there, there is no realization of the self. Why? Because there is still the attitude of holding on to that which is finite. considering the unreal to be real, it is still there. So even little bit, the ego is not required. We will come to this, that when we say no ego is required, it applies in the state of contemplation, where I withdraw completely by steady contemplation and all the other practices that we spoke. In that state of steady contemplation, complete withdrawal from the ego is necessary. One cannot hold on to little bit. One cannot say that 10% I will hold on to mano, buddhi, ahankara, chitta. 90% I will say I am not this. No, no. The dream character has to wake up fully from the dream. It has to drop the entire identification with the dream character. Then only one wakes up fully and one realizes that nothing was happening. But if that is not happening, then there is a full realization is not there. So one part is in the state of contemplation, I have to give up completely. So the point here is that in the state of contemplation, no traces of ego can remain. That meditation, contemplation has to be done in such a way that, see, if reflection is done properly, this will not happen. No problem with this. When I am convinced that I am not the ego, I am Brahman alone, why will I even allow little trace of it to remain? Who wants poison to be there in the food, in the body? Nobody wants. The analogy is quite interesting actually. Chandragupta Maurya, Chanakya trained him to uproot the corrupt Dhananand and the Nanda dynasty. Chanakya used to train him. And when Chanakya used to train him, one part of the training was that every day in the food, he used to mix little poison and give it to him. So his body got used to the poison. Why did he do that? Because the enemy, if they poison him, it should not affect. One. Two, if the enemy sends any other things like snake or any other natural thing by which he is bit and if they want to kill him, assassinate him, it will not work on him. So that poison which was given to him in small doses, his body became used to that. This analogy, when it says here that who would want the poison, here the poison is the poison of the ego. That why will we want the poison to be there? Even a little bit if it is left, we will get used to. We are already used to the ego. Now we are trying to eliminate that. A seeker who is living on this poison, who has got used to this poison, will not get affected by the poison. That's a different part of the analogy. Just to make one aware that this analogy can have both the sides. That one who is trying to live a life of complete health, does not want any poison in the body, will not leave even a trace of it. That is one part of the analogy. The other part of the analogy is that where the poison is fed continuously to that person becomes immune to that. No more it will affect that. When we live with lots of ego continuously, we are just immune. We will not, it doesn't pinch anymore, it doesn't affect anymore. Like an ordinary person, if they take poison, there will be lots of reaction. Now living with this ego, one has become so used to that egoistic reactions and egoistic living doesn't affect on anymore. That's the other part of the analogy. Here is a yogi who wants to get rid of this. That yogi should do what? Not allow any traces to be left behind. If somebody has done poisoning to this person, one has to eliminate that completely. So in that way, here it is that one has to eliminate the ego fully. So when we are doing steady contemplation, that ego has to be dropped. In the world, one takes up an identity which is only a functional identity. Psychologically, deep down, one knows I am Brahman, I am not different from it. I am playing this as a role. In that role, whatever I have to do, I have to do. Egolessness does not mean that I will not do what needs to be done. That is a misunderstanding of Vedanta also. When one says that no, I am egoless, doesn't mean allow anybody to come and trample upon you and exploit you. Getting exploited is no sign of egolessness. In fact, it is a sign of inferiority complex, which is ego only. The ego is weak. Where one is coming and where one is allowing somebody to exploit, I don't have the strength to retaliate. I'm just getting exploited. And then justifying it in the name of, no, I am a humble, egoless person. That person came and exploited. Egoless person will never get exploited. Why? Because egoless person is very, very alert. Because he is not trapped in the ego. Chanakya did not want anything for himself. He did it for the sake of his country. When the mind thinks only for the country, it doesn't want anything, it is not clouded by its own likes and dislikes. He did not want kingdom, he did not want power, he did not want pleasure. He wanted the country to be ruled by a righteous king. Devoted to the country, he did this whole thing, established Chandragupta on the throne, went away into the forest. Nobody knows what happened to him afterwards. He just disappeared because he did not have any craving for power, position, pleasure, nothing. And hence his mind was very, very alert and sharp. They could not predict what will he do, what was his whole game plan, and how he planned. He was there in his friend's house for a few months. All that he would do was lock himself up in the room, and they used to provide him food. He would not come out. And he was sitting there strategizing every single thing, what to do, when, how to plot the downfall of the minister, of the senapati, of the king, and how to plant people, who are the people, what is the strategy. Entire thing is strategizing in his head. Because of love for the country, because of purity of the heart, that there is nothing that I want in this. It is for the sake of my country, I am doing it. That purity of the heart, that selflessness is there. They could not even understand what Chanakya did. By the time they recognized, the entire fall was finished. They got destroyed. Same thing with Lord Krishna also. He did not allow people to take him for granted. Nobody could take him for granted. When there is genuine selflessness, there will be fearlessness, there will be complete alertness. These two go together with egolessness. So functional identity, one holds on that I am Mr. So and so, I have been given, this is my duty, or this is my role, this is my responsibility. That's a functional identity. When we say egolessness, it means no psychological insistence and no psychological dependence, no selfishness there. One identifies with something noble, nobler, higher, deeper. Then that person will be very, very alert. Like Shakuni took this Duryodhan for granted. And the whole Kaurava dynasty, he was sitting there as a enemy to plot the downfall and to ensure that the whole Kuru Vamsha gets destroyed. But ego of Dhritarashtra and Duryodhan could not see that also. That's how the people who are stuck in ego get trapped by their own ego, and they can't see who is taking them for a ride. And the strange part is, there are continuously people taking me for a ride when I am living in ego. And so I am also living in insecurity that I hope nobody takes me for a ride, nobody takes me for a ride. But my own ego is taking me for a ride. I may be insecure that other people should not take me for a ride, but my ego is taking me for a ride. because it is trapping me in my own likes and dislikes. These are my people, these are not my people. So I will be partial towards my people and I will be harsh towards the other people. Genuinely, somebody may be my well wisher. Vidur was a well wisher. Krishna was their well wisher, but they could not even accept what they are saying. Shakuni is not a well wisher, but he is being looked upon as a well wisher. So whatever he says, they are doing. Gandhari had much more clarity. Gandhari had told Dhritarashtra, send this Shakuni away. He is sitting here to destroy us. But they could not listen to her. This is how, when we are trapped in the ego, we are insecure, we are scared. And our own ego takes us for a ride. So where is the question of happiness being there in all this? So egolessness is not going to allow people to exploit us. Getting trapped in the ego is where we get exploited. A person who is egoless is a person who is fearless. Why does that person have to fear anything? Because the person is very clear about what is the goal of life, what one wants to really achieve. Selflessness genuinely is there. Hence he says even a little bit of poison will not allow the yogi to realize the absolute truth. In the same way, even a little bit of ego is not good for us. The more one understands this beauty of egolessness in daily life, in relationships, plus in meditation. In daily life, life becomes much more peaceful, harmonious, because ability to accept comes. Opening up happens. I am able to connect more lovingly with people around me. There is much more security. There is fearlessness. There is alertness. Devotion arises in my heart. I really find the joy in the process and serve with that attitude of genuinely giving out and helping. So when egolessness, the more I think about egolessness and how is it, is this real? So then see the lives of great masters. All these what we just spoke, that egolessness brings all these realized masters are exhibiting that in their life. Angulimal cannot scare Gautam Buddha. Valmiki, Ratnakar could not scare this Saptarishis or Naradji. No fear at all. Mirabai has no insecurity that my husband is sending me poison. Prahlad has no problem that his own father is trying to kill him. How they live, even in the most difficult circumstances, what we saw now, Dhira Purusha. In the most provocative circumstances also, their mind doesn't lose the balance. They don't become insecure. They don't start reacting. Why? Because egolessness has given them that strength. See, if a child calls us something, the child says, in anger, the child says, Mummy, I hate you. Will the mother really feel bad? If the mother takes it very personally with ego in mind, then the mother will feel bad. Otherwise, the mother is not going to feel bad. Mother will know, this fellow is saying it in anger. In the same way, somebody calls us something, tells us something, they are themselves disturbed. If I take it personally with ego, then I am miserable. If I learn to let go and I say it's okay, that person said it in this context or this condition. If I have to I have to give an appropriate response, I may give also. But why feel hurt and sad and all that? Take it so personally, not required. So in daily life also, I should see the glory of egolessness, that the lesser the ego I have, greater is the peace. Ultimately come to the state of no ego. My work can help me to dissolve my ego. My relationships can help me to dissolve my ego in love. So I can use it for that, or I can use it to boost by this justification that no, little ego is required in the world. no ego is required in the world, then only I can decide appropriately what has to be done. If I have to fight, I will fight also, but no ego. That's what Bhagavan taught Arjun in the Gita. Tato yuddhaya yujyasva naivam papam avapsyasi. Oh Arjun, you fight because it is the duty, it is your functional duty as a Kshatriya, not out of ego, not for revenge, not for land, not for kingdom, not for fame. Adharmic forces have to be destroyed, so do it. So egolessness means all this. That I will still do what needs to be done, but without any sense of insecurity or craving for power, position, nothing. That mind, just imagine how free is that person. Only when I am egoless, to the extent I am egoless, I am fearless. To that extent, I can even explore unknown things, new inventions, explore uncharted territory, walk the spiritual path. So how does one live egolessly in the world here? That is where seva comes, values like humility come, daily sadhana comes, that I surrender to the Ishtadevata or to the Sadguru, every day connect to them. Those are all means to develop egolessness. Serve selflessly, connect to the Lord daily, read the scriptures, reflect upon it. Okay, what is the glory of this egolessness? The lives of saints, I must listen to the lives of saints, read the lives of saints. So those things help me to become egoless. And then such a mind which is living, which has let go of many insistences in the world outside, that mind, when it sits for contemplation that I am pure consciousness, I am not this body, mind, intellect, I am not the ego, will realize very fast. Otherwise, a strong ego in the daily life, contemplation is also useless. So our goal must be complete egolessness. See, we don't have to realize, we don't have to create Brahman. Brahman is my nature. What is covering it is ego. I cannot say that, okay, I am very happy with some 10% covering gone. To that extent, light of Brahman I am experiencing. 90% ego, let it be there. It is contradictory. It is like saying that I have seen now that 10% rope I have seen. The 90% snake, let it remain. That is not proper. Even glimpses of the state of realization when one has, one is pushed out of that state because of past karma and vasanas. Again, one puts effort to go and realize. Till one doesn't come to eliminate the ego completely, till that the bliss of Brahman is not realized fully. So egolessness in the daily life and egolessness in the state of contemplation, where again and again with effort I push myself back till I don't eliminate that ego fully and get established in that Brahman. That is called Atmanishtha. Nirvikalpa Samadhi, if you remember what we have discussed. Nirvikalpa Samadhi, continuous practice of Nirvikalpa Samadhi will lead to establishment in the truth. That is called Sahaj Samadhi. Then Yad Gatva Nanivartante. From that state, one will never fall into the level of ignorance. But till one doesn't establish there, one will again and again come out of that state. Again, the identification with the body will happen. World will become real. Again, one puts the effort, goes up to that state. This process, when one does, lot of Dehabhiman will get destroyed. And a point comes where one gets established in that absolute. So that's what this verse indicates, that don't leave a trace of ego. In the daily life also, no trace of ego. And in the contemplation also, till the Atmanishtha doesn't happen, no trace of ego. So these are two aspects of this verse and this analogy. So for today, we will stop here. Any questions? You're welcome to ask.
Namaste, Swamiji. You said we have to become egoless. Now, can we become egoless for as long as the prarabdha exists?
See, prarabdha, that's the point. Now the question is, who is this entity to whom prarabdha exists? Prarabdha exists for the jiva. One. What is prarabdha? Prarabdha is the karma phala. Now, when we say that realization has to happen, I am striving as a seeker. What am I trying to do? I am trying to detach from the body, mind, and intellect and the kartritva, bhoktritva bhav, which is the ego. So, when steadily I contemplate and I say, I am not this, I am not this, I am not this, I am using my present purushartha to eject myself out of this false identification, which is possible. But the body and the body and this Mr. So and so, which has to go through this prarabdha, it will still go through, but I don't have to identify that I am that. So the realized master, how does the master live? Master also has a prarabdha, but master says, this is not my prarabdha, this is a prarabdha of the body. So one is indifferent to it.
Okay,
So it
thank
is
you.
possible to be egoless while the prarabdha is there, because if this was not true, realization is just not possible, because every time I go through prarabdha, I have ego, I am sowing seeds for new karma, there is no end to this. So the solution is what? Disidentification. I am not the jiva, prarabdha belongs to jiva, prarabdha belongs to body, I am Brahman. That is the Purusha.
Okay, thank you.
We continue next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti